That is mainly it. Well, where you at, baby? Do it again. See ya.
All right, fine. I hope you're proud of what you've done, chat. I think we get there.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the OPSEAT video podcast. I'm your host, Drew Pejors, Twitch partner and social media manager for OPSEAT. We created this podcast to introduce you to successful gamers who have used various strategies to build personal brands and make a profit with them. Please make sure to like and subscribe wherever you enjoy your live streams or podcasts. Now today, we are joined by Twitch streamer RedRame. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, hello. Thank you so much for having me.
It's honestly a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and we really appreciate you joining us today. Now, if you could, please tell us your name and what most people might recognize you for.
All right. So my real name is Jonathan. I'm currently a college student, so I've kind of been balancing that with Twitch a lot, which has been a little bit hard for me. So I'm a little bit of an irregular streamer. I mostly stream Gwent, which is a Witcher-based card game for people who might not be familiar with that. But I also will sometimes just stream other games when I feel like streaming, more or less just whatever indie or whatever I'm playing at the time. I'm not too picky about it.
There you go. And I mean, when and how did you first start playing video games in general?
Oh, if I remembered that, I would tell you. But I have a long history of video games and card games both, since I have a bit of an intersection in terms of like what I'm doing with that now on Twitch. Because I mean, Gwent's sure it's a video game, but it's also a digital card game. So like, I have a lot of history in like both of those regards. The first video games I can really remember myself playing were like those crappy Flash games on just like, just free online stuff, basically. I played a lot of Smash in sort of like my middle school years. I don't know. I've kind of just gone with the wind until eventually I kind of found my home in card games. They really spoke out to me. I had a couple of neighborhood friends who really liked card games. Just sort of the strategy aspect of them suited me. I got big into Pokemon TCG. Played that competitively for a while.
Really?
And then I did actually.
What was that like to play Pokemon competitively? Like the card game, not the actual Game Boy games for those listening.
I played the Game Boy games too, but that's a different story. I'm all over the map. I'm trying my best, but it's a struggle. Playing the card game competitively, I'm not really sure how to like. It feels like playing most other card games competitively. Like it feels very different from just like going into a game casually and like collecting cards just sort of off of like their own merit.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It was very interesting as a kid because I originally got into the card game casually. So I definitely had like my fair few like missteps in terms of like people offering me bad trades or things like that while I was kind of just learning the ropes and getting used to actually trying to like assemble a real deck.
Do you feel like you ever come across like missteps of like, I mean, with Gwent, like I'm not as familiar as you might be with Gwent. Are you able to trade cards digitally through games like Gwent with other users?
The way that the card is assembled, the card collection is assembled in Gwent is sort of similar to how it is in Hearthstone, which is also a game I was a big fan of when it initially came out. So basically you just have the option to disenchant extra copies of cards or cards that you don't want, and then it gets you like a small amount of progression towards making whatever cards you need.
There are certain things, like especially in digital games, things like that. I mean, even in terms of like FPS games, battle royales, and things like that, there are skins that you can have. I mean, H1Z1, I had a moment where I accidentally scrapped like one of the most expensive guns in the game, trying to get better scrap, and that was a $100 mistake right there. I was curious if that would like make it into any of the games that you played, like Hearthstone or Gwent.
I might have made like some small mistakes in Hearthstone a couple of times, but honestly, Gwent, one of the biggest pros of Gwent is just how forgiving it is in terms of like giving you cards and like giving you the resources. And with how long I've been playing, I have an entire collection and then like a buttload of scrap that's just sitting around with nothing to do.
There you go.
Now, honestly, like from a monetary perspective, they could probably be a little bit greedier and get away with it. But I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
So I can't say I've made any like costly mistakes like that. I actually haven't spent any money at all on Gwent. At least not for cards. I probably have like a couple of expenses that you could attribute to Gwent for streaming and such. But
Yeah, and I mean, like talking about expenses and like bringing it into streaming and things like that. I'm curious. Taking your love for games and these card games and everything. I mean, at what point did you feel like you wanted to start creating content on Twitch, and what brought you to that point?
So that's kind of a funny story for me. Initially, I never really set out to be a streamer. I feel like most people, like I feel like there's enough of a gauntlet on Twitch that a lot of people have to run through. That it's like you start out small and then you like very slowly like grow your way there.
Yeah.
But for me, I kind of just wanted to play the game, and then I ended up just like building some. I really like deck building. I really like kind of just doing my own thing and toying around with stuff. So I just kind of made like my own decks, and they did a little bit better than they thought they would. And so I made some guides, and people just like really started noticing them. They gave a lot of traction to me, and then people would just keep asking me like, "Yo, why don't you stream?" I mean, my answer to that at the time was that I had my laptop had the worst GPU. It was when I did try to stream, there were a lot of trials of me just like trying to get it to work. And then I realized that, if you have a literal potato, you can hit all of the buttons you want. It's still going to be a potato.
That is true.
Yeah. Surprisingly, some people even watched me during those early trials. But I think the real moment I decided I wanted to start streaming like somewhat regularly was when I actually got the equipment to do it. When I got myself like a real gaming laptop. And it's been super fun ever since.
Definitely. And I mean, so when you're streaming on Twitch, you have, amassed like a pretty good following of people who watch you play Gwent and build these cards. Build the decks and everything with the cards. And I'm curious, do you ever like upload them to YouTube or diversify the content that you create, like not just on Twitch?
I'm looking into doing that more. I make a couple of YouTube videos, but I'm not really a big fan of like sort of like high quantity output onto YouTube. Like I think there are a lot of channels that just do like gameplay. Like here's a game that I played that was kind of cool, and now it's on YouTube. But I feel like there's already so much of that on Twitch, and I feel like Twitch is kind of just like the better platform for delivering that because it's live and you get the chat experience and just like there's so many other great things about Twitch.
Yeah.
That I usually reserve YouTube for doing like maybe a guide or like also just like some other series. Like sometimes I'll talk about like maybe there's like an archetype in Gwent, like just like some cards that are like supposed to synergize with each other that like don't really see any play or like don't work as they're intended. And I'll like try to go through and like revisit that and talk about like what changes I would make to try to help them along. So I just do kind of like one-offs like that. I make it sound like I do YouTube. Honestly, I'm not very committed to like uploading regularly.
Yeah, but
I'll post once in a blue moon, and it's fun when I do. But I'm also, as I said earlier, I'm balancing everything I do on Twitch and everything else with the college schedule. So
yeah,
it's a lot of fun for me to try to do all that.
Definitely. And I feel like a lot of people typically have a struggle with being able to use their time effectively between, going to school and streaming, and especially like creating like either little highlights or like little videos for YouTube. But something that I noticed with your channel when I was looking over it is a lot of people watch your VODs. And it like, I don't know if you've noticed this about your channel compared to a lot of others, but I mean, even your stream like 4 days ago had 105 views on the VOD, and 11 days ago it had 154. 18 days ago had 394, and that's not something standard that you'll see across platform, especially with Twitch being a live content creation website basically. So that's why I was kind of asking about YouTube, if you ever kind of looked more into that, because it seems like a lot of people are looking for the basically the knowledge that you bring with a card game and the different things that you do with it. So I wanted to point that out because I think that's really cool that you're actually using. I mean, it seems to me that your recent broadcasts are a very effective tool for people to be able to watch you if they miss you when you're live. Now, I know you're in school and everything like that, but would you ever want, streaming to replace a traditional job?
I would definitely consider it. I had a period of like maybe 2 months or so, like during like the middle to the end of last summer, where I kind of just, as a fun experiment, since I didn't really have any other major commitments to do, just started streaming super regularly for a long period, for like 6 hours a day in, day out. Honestly, it started feeling more like a grind, and I don't think I would want to do just streaming for that long.
Yeah.
Like same game, same stream, like every single day without breaks. It just quickly like wears you out, and I feel like I would love to do more stuff quantity wise, but I definitely care more about like the quality of my streams and like making sure that people come back, or like just the fact that you pointed out that so many people watch my VODs, I think is really cool. Like that means that people are actively seeking me out as opposed to like, just checking, who's on? I guess I'll watch this person. So I definitely want to sort of keep that aspect to it, but I would definitely consider trying to find some sort of compromise that would allow me to do it full time or at least more often. And I think you might be totally up onto something in saying that YouTube would be a good outlet for the type of stuff that I do.
Yeah.
I'm definitely really interested in sort of building up a presence there.
Certainly. And I mean, just out of sheer curiosity, I mean, if you ever were to go full time with streaming or anything like that, or if you wanted to kind of avoid the same day in and day out kind of stream, or 6 hours a day at the grind, as they call it, what are some things that you feel like you could use to make your stream or content better than it is right now?
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
If I knew like a really good answer to that, guess what I would be doing right now? I mean, I'm also a senior, so I would like to just finish up my degree. Maybe it's just sunken cost fallacy at this point. It's like, I already spent, this long. I may as well see it out. But it's also just like, I also like what I do at school. I'm not like particularly in a rush to try to like go for a full-time gig or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what are you finishing up school with?
I'm actually a bio major,
wow.
which is maybe not what you would expect. I'm kind of all over the map in terms of my interests. I mostly just try to do stuff that's cool as opposed to like sort of like seeing how I can put it together in terms of like a career or anything like that. Kind of just letting the career come to me based on what I find that I'm good at and what I'm interested in. I also am taking some courses on game design, which is probably less of a shocker.
That's really cool.
My school doesn't have a major for that, but they have a really cool minor program, and I really enjoy the classes that I get to take for that. Right now, we're doing some stuff with virtual reality. We actually like make games. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, I don't doubt that, and especially with the growing field that virtual reality basically brings, like VR and augmented reality both are like fields that kind of like have an untapped presence, really, where there's limitless things that can come out of it. But I mean, and coming back to streaming and things like that, how long would you say you've been playing Gwent, and what really keeps you playing?
So that's a good question. I would estimate I've played Gwent for like 2 years, maybe a little longer in total. But it's not like nonstop. I've played Gwent for 2 years. Gwent in particular has a really loyal following, but it's also had like really major periods of just like sort of just like peaks and troughs in terms of like the quality of the game. Like there are a couple of specific patches that like members of the community are like, oh yeah, how did this ever happen?
Yeah.
Just things like that. So it's been kind of a rocky road. I came off of a pretty long break before I started streaming super regularly. I would say from like from like October of last year, when Homecoming launched, which was like one of the biggest updates for the game. Basically just completely changed everything. It's basically Gwent 2.0. And all the way until like May or so, I would say I was only just checking in on occasion, kind of to see what was up. I was playing some other card games. I was just doing other stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean,
But
like,
like,
through all the troughs and everything with Gwent, how have you managed to like retain or keep your audience interested like throughout all these?
I sometimes wonder if I have, honestly, because I feel like a lot of times, like I've interacted a lot of people like over the couple of years that I played, but I think it's largely different sets of people, just because like so many people have come and gone. Like I've always like sort of stuck my nose in. I've always been there to sort of like see what's going on. But I've never been like I haven't been like a constant sort of like huge presence that's been streaming for like all of those 2 years. So I think to some degree, just being good at the game, not to sound like an arrogant prick, but that does help. uh, it's a little bit hard for people to ignore you when you're putting up results. Also, I think a lot of people look for sort of like either a really good personality or a really good player when they're checking out the stream or other content. And I feel like I have a fairly unique approach in like trying to hybridize the two. Like I feel like I can deliver, like I can try my best at playing something that's maybe a little more fun or casual, or I can crack a few jokes while I'm playing seriously or just things like that.
Yeah, and I honestly love the fact that you said it's really hard for people to ignore you if you're putting up results. That's something that like I think a lot of people they miss out on. They focus too much on like their personality or not having like a good mixture of both. I really like that you're able to keep it, really if you're really into the gameplay and you can crack a few jokes. And then I'm also kind of curious, like, you and a lot of other TCG players have gotten involved in a team called Rankstar. Could you tell me a little bit more about Rankstar and why you decided to get involved in that?
Sure. So I initially found out about Team Rankstar through one of my friends at one of the North American lands, which was a really big deal at the time because Gwent is was developed in Poland, and like most of their events have been like European in terms of location. So it was actually like the first ever like big meetup in North America at all, where people like actually physically traveled for a tournament that was like North America centered. So as a result of that, I made a lot of great friends, and one of the friends I met happened to be the captain of Team Rankstar, Apelian, and not directly at the event, but just like kind of through the grapevine.
Yeah.
And I just got to hear about the fact that there was like a new team that was going to tackle a lot of different card games, had like a really major interest in Gwent, and would it be able to support streaming and whatnot. And I don't know, it sounded great to me. A lot of my friends from Wild Hunt and just from other events were already there. Honestly, that made the decision a lot easier for me. Like, there's sort of like sort of the mentality of being a lone wolf is kind of appealing to me in terms of like, oh yeah, it's all me or something like that. But it's also really great to have a community of people who you can talk to and just like discuss ideas with safely, and just like kind of chill out and have a good time. And so to me, it wasn't really like I was joining a team. It was more just like I was joining a Discord where like I could hang out with my friends, and that sounded great to me. And then over time, as I got a little more comfortable there, I got into a lot of this more like team-oriented stuff that we do, just in terms of like writing content for their site, or just like whatnot, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah.
And it seems like everything with the team has actually put together, a really good system of tools, not only for the people in it, but also for people who are just have a love for the card games. Like you guys have your own podcast, you guys have your own like tips and everything like that. And it's really cool to be able to see such an organized team. And I'm curious with how many different kind of like card games and things like that from the community that even Team Rankstar has. I mean, if you could pick any other game besides Gwent to be your main game, what would it be?
Oh, that's hard. So I've had a couple of other main games over the years, both card games and otherwise. There's actually, if I had to say like what my quote unquote main game was before Gwent came along, and also that I played like a lot even after I got really into Gwent. There's actually a game that was still in alpha at the time called Prismata that's like the access on Steam right now, and I have a couple of friends who play that. It's like a really small, tight-knit community. The actual game itself is really cool, but kind of difficult to like explain concisely on stream.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. I played Hearthstone for quite a while as well. I think there's a really big debate, like just between like sort of like Hearthstone and Magic as like the templates, just because so many different card games will sort of like base their rules off of one of those two games, and then just try to like tweak one thing, or in some cases not tweak anything, and just see if they can like put a different skin on it and sell it as their own game.
Yeah.
So I'm actually kind of in the minority who would side with Hearthstone. I feel like the Magic rule set's kind of a bit outdated. The fact that there's like a 20-year-old game that has the land problem and people are kind of just willing to sit idly by is a little bit funny to me. Just in terms of like sometimes you won't draw mana and then you'll lose because you won't be able to do anything.
Yeah, it's kind of like RNG at that point, like strictly RNG.
Like obviously card games, like you're drawing from a deck, there's going to be some RNG, but I feel like that's already like, I feel like you don't want too much RNG besides like the built-in inherent RNG. And if you have RNG, you also want it to be like RNG that your players can interact with instead of just like, hey, look, I guess I didn't draw this card that I need in order to play the game at all, you know? Just like that sort of thing.
Without a doubt. And I mean, so you've been streaming for a couple of years now, and we're curious. Has there ever been like another content creator that you've looked up to or has helped you get to where you're at now?
So I could probably have a long list of content creators that I've looked up to. In terms of like raw help, there are a couple who have been absolutely huge. Honestly, just the entire Gwent Twitch community has been extremely kind to me, and that's like been a big reason for my success. I've definitely gotten sort of like an unfairly like disproportionate amount of hosts from people. It just feels like whenever I happen to like start up a stream and like who's big is like recently like ending their stream, it seems like I just somehow always end up with a host. And it's like kind of crazy to me. I sometimes wonder even to this day if I only pull in the numbers that I do because of hosts. In particular, there's a streamer by the name of Sir Pumpkin, who we're really great friends from the land that I mentioned before. And also just a couple of other things. We've done a couple of co-streams that have been really fun, where it'd be like I would build a deck and then he would try to play it on stream, see that I was hanging out in his Twitch chat, and then just be like, yo, do you want to come on? That's led to some really great moments. So that's been really fun. He's been incredibly supportive, and I've definitely gotten my name out a lot that way. In addition to him just hosting me fairly frequently. So if I had to shout out one person who's not on my team, at least, it would definitely be him. Obviously, Team Rankstar has helped a ton. I wouldn't be here without Team Rankstar. Helped me hook up with y'all, which I'm very thankful for. I love the chair, by the way.
Thank you.
My old gamer chair just like gave me a lot of back pain. And it was kind of amazed just like how quickly I noticed the difference. Just because you have so much control over the positioning of the chair. And I like having a chair that's able to recline, but I also just can't like sit 8 hours on a chair that's like constantly leaned back, you know?
Definitely. Well, we really appreciate it, and we're really happy to be working with you. And honestly, we're also kind of curious, you know, what you think your best trait that helps you, you know, remain successful in this field is. Would you say it's your skill level? Would you say it's your personality? Because obviously a lot of people are loving the level of skill that you bring, just based on the fact that people are watching your VODs for like the knowledge base that you bring to the deck building.
I think if I had to pick a one-word skill, I would actually go with creativity, probably. I think there are a lot of players who are as skilled as I am, or even more skilled, who kind of just play meta decks and sort of go under the radar because of that.
Yeah.
Or maybe just like sort of just don't like show off as much. Like I sort of attribute like the fact that I have I feel like a lot of my personality sort of comes from the fact that I'm willing to think like a little more outside the box or just do things that other people wouldn't. I feel like that's been really helpful. I feel like with just how many people are streaming all the time, like just with how much content there is to watch, like if you're not your own person, you're basically no one. It's like really hard to like separate yourself from 1,000 people who are doing the same thing. You kind of have to dig your own little niche, and I feel like that was surprisingly easy for me. But I've noticed it's something that a lot of people struggle with, so I'm very thankful for that.
Definitely. And it seems to be that you're going to be continuously doing that for a very long time, and we certainly look forward to it. Now, what advice would you be able to give someone trying to become, a trading card game streamer?
Ooh, that's hard. Trying to become a trading card game streamer. I mean, the big one is you have to really like what you're doing. If you're not like having fun with a game, you need to be willing to take a break from the game or find a different game or just find something else to do. Or maybe just like play a different deck. Maybe something's just not like I feel like a lot of people try to play like the best decks or just like an assortment of the best decks, and I feel like there's a lot more to it than that. I think getting like sort of like like gameplay wise, getting a fundamental understanding of the game is really valuable because there's just a lot that you can do with that. In terms of like the actual sort of streaming side of things, honestly, I'm less of an expert about that. Like by all of like the standard measures, I shouldn't be a successful streamer. I'm literally using my laptop cam right now. I have not purchased like anything special in that regard. I'm using just kind of like a generic headset, which a fairly nice generic headset, but still, like I don't really have any of like the good sort of traditional like how do you set up the most killer looking stream type of advice, which I think is probably very valuable to a lot of people. So I would kind of.
I personally think it's very valuable to invest more in yourself as a streamer, not the streamer's tools. So I think it's completely fine that you haven't invested in like a nice camera or like the world's best mic because you focus on what makes you, your own unique niche. As you've pointed out before, is you've invested more in like your knowledge about the gameplay or like the card game and the fundamental basics. I think that's very important, and I think a lot of people, if they're trying to become like a trading card game streamer, should be able to use you as a reference point that it's not about having the nicest tools. It's about investing in yourself and not the tools that you have, which is, I think that's really important.
I definitely would agree with that. I'm kind of choking on that question because that's a really tough one. If I could easily answer, how do you do what I do? I'm sure there would be a lot more people trying to do what I do.
Yeah, but I feel like, streamers like myself, if I were to jump onto Hearthstone or Gwent, I don't think I would spend the hours to learn how the game works. I might just spend a lot of time getting upset that I'm not winning every time, So I feel like where you succeed and do the best would definitely be you have, a great understanding of the trading card games. And it shows by how many people are like trying to tune in just to learn how you do what you do. And in fact, like, is there anywhere where people can learn more about what you do outside of your Twitch channel?
So it's kind of an old resource, but there's a site called GwentDB, sort of just back in the day. Honestly, don't maybe scratch that, but that's how I initially gained a lot of traction. I had guides that got like tens of thousands of views, like per deck that I was posting on there. I kind of made it big just from like sort of posting my list and then just giving like a long explanation of like, here's the purpose of each card. Here's how you use them in X, Y matchups, things like that. Let's see. Obviously, it's probably news to more people than I'd like to admit. given how little I'm currently using it. I'm definitely going to be pushing to change that. I mean, Team Rankstar is obviously not a bad spot. I honestly can't think of like too many other ones that I would shout out in terms of like, where to go to learn more about what I do.
Okay. And that's completely fine. I mean, like a lot of people definitely use your channel as a reference or learn what you do through there. So definitely check out twitch.tv/RedRame. But, I'm also curious. Over the years that you've been streaming and getting to where you're at right now, what would you say is your favorite accomplishment that you've gone through?
Ooh, favorite accomplishment. It might honestly, I don't know if you could call it an accomplishment, but there's a clip of me falling over in the chair during an interview that went really viral. And looking back on it, I'm really proud of that clip. I feel like with all the things I've done, I feel kind of silly saying, "Oh yeah, that's my best accomplishment," but I don't know. It's the one that sticks out to me the most.
That's actually that's a fun one, and I actually really like that because I mean, like you were able to gain traction with that clip, and there's the saying that any press is good press. So
Yeah,
whether you're
I mean,
or not, yeah.
I wasn't even sold it was bad press. I mean, I was messing around during that tournament. I brought my attitude to the LAN. That's all I can really say,
That's awesome. And then, I mean, over the years, there are bound to be things that go, not necessarily the way that you had hoped. If you don't mind sharing, what might have been like your biggest learning experience through streaming?
Definitely like the early struggles of, my stream is literally a PowerPoint. Why is that? Kind of embarrassing to go back and look through. Just like how long I was willing to put up with my stream not even being a stream. And just like the fact that my first instinct was just, I'm not really familiar with streaming software. Maybe there are a whole bunch of buttons that I can push. Just like, I'm really stubborn when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Got it from my dad. I also had my dad around at the time, which didn't help because he kind of just assumed that anything that was wrong with it was a problem with me. Like, I don't really know how to explain it other than it's just like,
maybe it comes more from an area of just like the just fix it mentality. Like you don't need to buy new stuff. It's like it doesn't matter about the hardware. Like
absolutely, I had that thing for quite a long time.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's like a thing that like a lot of people that streamers might have something similar with their families where like it's just when you're just starting out, you don't necessarily know how to do everything, and like sometimes everybody's just like just fix it. Sometimes you just
yeah.
But yeah, definitely it's one of those things where like hopefully people who have been streaming for a while, not necessarily that they need to be embarrassed about like where they started out, but there should be like visual growth in the way that either a streamer is presented or the mentality of the streamer or the personality of the streamer. So maybe it's a good thing that you were doing a PowerPoint presentation in the beginning so you can see where you were at when you started, and you can kind of see like it is a massive difference from PowerPoints because I mean, just obviously people enjoy the VODs with how many people are clicking on them, but like it's functional. You're able to deliver your points, the information, you're able to explain the way that you build your cards, and sling a few jokes on the way, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the OPC podcast, and
it's been great. Thank you so much.
Definitely. And I hope that a lot of people, if you're interested in learning about trading card games, Gwent, Hearthstone, or anything, I definitely recommend checking out RedRame, as he has a really good solid foundation for knowledge on the way he builds a deck. And I'm sure if anybody comes into the stream or pops in or is listening to the podcast, I'm sure they can go to you for questions or answered, or even check out Rankstar and their website for ways to get into the community.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's been a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for being on the OPC podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Have an amazing day.